So without further ado, it is my privilege and pleasure to introduce our PhD candidate at UC San Diego, earning her degree in transforming education in a diverse society. It sounds like light work. Hayley also serves as the UC student regent, representing over 280,000 undergraduate and graduate students across the UC system. In this role, Hayley chairs the Regent's Special Committee on Basic Needs. Can we give her a round of applause as she comes to the stage?
Hi, everyone. I think I have the easiest and the coolest role today because I have the pleasure of introducing 4 phenomenal women who will be serving on our keynote panel. And they'll be coming up as I'm introducing them. So the first is Alexis Fernandez, an alumna of UC San Diego and UC Berkeley. Alexis is a conflicted Triton bear. She's also the chief of the CalFresh and Nutrition branch at the California Department of Social Services. In this role, she oversees one of the largest anti-hunger programs in the country, CalFresh. She oversees outreach, nutrition education, employment and training, and disaster CalFresh programs. So we give her a round of applause. Our second panelist is Marlene Garcia. Marlene Garcia is the executive director of the California Student Aid Commission, where she oversees a budget of, listen up, close to $3 billion and a team of 125 people. She's passionate about expanding educational opportunity by removing financial barriers to college success. So please welcome Marlene. Our third amazing panelist is Jessica Bartholow. Woo! Jess is a policy advocate at the Western Center on Law and Poverty. She's also chair of the California Asset Building Coalition and serves on the board of the National Diaper Bank and Period Supply Alliance. Yes, we love that. She helped to launch California's CalFresh outreach program 15 years ago and has over 20 years of experience as an anti-poverty organizer, activist, and policy leader. So welcome, Jess. And if these bios weren't impressive enough already, I have our fourth panelist, Lande Ajose. Dr. Lande Ajose is the Senior Policy Advisor for Higher Education for Governor Gavin Newsom. She's responsible for developing and shaping the governor's higher education policy agenda, which is focused on protecting college affordability, preserving college access, and increasing system efficiency in order to meet the state's needs for both a skilled and educated workforce. So welcome, Lande. Now you can all enjoy me awkwardly walking across the stage for a few steps as I take my seat. Okay. So we have 4 phenomenal women here, and I have 2 pre-planned questions, and we'll have several minutes for each panelist to respond. And then get ready, because we're going to have roving microphones for you all to engage in the conversation as well. And I just wanted to be transparent that our goal for this panel is for you all to feel empowered. So yes, the scope of food and housing insecurity can be overwhelming, but there are folks across the state doing this work collectively, and we want you to feel a part of that. We want you to feel motivated coming out of this keynote panel. So with that, I'd love to hear from the panelists. How are you and or your organizations improving college students' basic needs? And I can open it up for anyone who'd like to start.
We should have practiced.
Oh, we didn't practice who would go first.
You can go first.
But I'll go first. And, I just want to tell you that I'm sitting forward because if I sit back, my feet don't touch the ground. So I'm just representing the short people. Shout out for the short people. Woo! Woo! That's right. So again, Jess Bartholow, Western Center on Law and Poverty, and also with the California Asset Building Coalition and the Diaper Bank Network, the National Diaper Bank Network. So what we're doing at the Western Center is, I work in Sacramento, so I help to work on the budget and legislation that you've seen kind of come through your way. Who's aware of the Hunger-Free Campus Initiative? Woo! This really came from you all, from campus work to end hunger, and it was my great pleasure to be able to help take the dreams and aspirations of people working on campuses and help put it to paper, right? And help to make sure that the various benchmarks that a bill needs to do, and then it turned into a budget item, and then it's turned into 3 years of budget, to make sure that the various benchmarks are achieved, so that goes through gently, and help to connect the conversations from the campuses to the Capitol. And that's what we do, just to help with various pieces of legislation. So the electronic benefit transfer legislation that you're seeing EBT available on your campuses. That's been something I've been able to work on in the building, and also with the department. And so maybe I'll pass it off to Alexis so she can share what she's doing.
Great. So I'm the chief over the CalFresh and Nutrition branch at the Department of Social Services, and one of the exciting things about working at CDSS is that I have counterparts in CalWorks, housing and homelessness, immigrant integration, right? So we at CDSS have a mission to aid, protect, serve some of California's most vulnerable, and luckily get to do that with CalFresh. Jess and I go way back to my advocacy days, so I am a proud bureau activist. I, in this role, have the privilege to lead a team that is focused on improving CalFresh access. Particularly when it comes to students, we have spent quite a bit of energy with you all here in the room to really think about how we can serve students in California. We are, as many of you are familiar, dealing with tough federal rules when it comes to student eligibility, and so we really are interested in doing our best to make sure that eligible students, regardless of that rule, are accessing benefits. We do that through the traditional kind of food benefits that CalFresh offers, as well as through our outreach program, which is focused on making sure folks know that the benefits are there for them. As well as through our employment and training program. We've got Fresh Success in the house. We'll be talking about them in a couple of days. Whoop, whoop. And then we also oversee the emergency food distribution programs for the state of California. So though that is not, no one wants to have to depend on an emergency food network, but sometimes that is where we are. That is our reality. And so we also work with our emergency food partners to make sure that when that is what you need, it is available. So. And that's what we're doing. We spend a lot of time with folks in this room. So yeah, that's what we're up to.
Thank you. Lande, do you want to give a little overview?
Sure. So first of all, thank you all for having me. I'm delighted to be here with you. I feel really honored to actually do the work that I have the privilege of doing in the governor's office, and to work side by side with all of you who come to visit my office and let me know what is on your minds, to work with the chancellors of the system, to work, I told someone earlier today, I feel like my job is about being a midwife to change, right? Like, I actually don't do the work. You all do the work, and I am simply the person there to try and move the process along. Now, given that we're in the governor's office, there is, people usually come to my office asking for money. So I'm clear about what y'all want, But honestly, I feel like the work that we're trying to do in the Newsom administration is really fundamentally about three things. The governor has set out an agenda where we're really fundamentally looking at California's incredible cost crisis and what that means in terms of anyone who lives in the state. Looking at a California that is quite frankly different from what we're seeing in much of the nation, because it's fundamentally rooted in justice for all and an equity agenda. And also looking at a California that is where we know that operating effectively and efficiently as government, where we know that serving you all, because we actually have some stewardship and authority over the resources of government, is our main job. And so that is really what we are about. I think for me, when I think about higher education, that means that we're really taking on, what it means for California students to go to college and addressing total cost of attendance. When you looked at last year's budget and what the governor put in, yes, he gave money to the CSU and to the community colleges and to the UC, but you saw money for food and housing insecurity and basic needs. You saw money for legal services. You saw money for mental health services. You saw money for all of the things that the governor knows become barriers for students being able to complete. Because he knows that it's not simply enough to get your admissions letter. It's not simply enough to get your financial aid packet, because there are barriers that are real when you get to that campus. And so what we're trying to do is making sure that we are thinking very deeply and clearly about what does it mean to support the total cost of attendance in this state? What does that mean in terms of the real barriers that students are facing when they walk in the door? And what is our job and our responsibility to help support students and our institutions in making sure that students can get through, that they can get through in the most efficient and effective way. You know, Tim White often says for every uptick in a percentage in the graduation rate, that's 2,500 more seats. That's 2,500 more students who get through the CSU. That's students going through more quickly. Like, that's real. And so we're trying to think really comprehensively about what all of that means, and then support the work that you all are doing, not just around basic needs, and while that's important, but because fundamentally, like many of you, I didn't come from a lot either. There's no way anyone who looked at my childhood, looked at me at the age of 16, would say that I would ever be working in the governor's office. There is no way. And so it is about making sure that we are extending opportunity, real opportunity, not just with an admission letter, but in making sure students are able to get to and through college. So that's what we're about.
Well, thank you for allowing me to be here with you today. I'm just really inspired by all of you and all the smiling, friendly faces of friends that I've worked with over the years. And I'm also very grateful to work with this amazing group of women, particularly Lande, and the work that she does. So I'm the executive director of the California Student Aid Commission. And it's really an amazing honor for me to have this role. I've only been at it now for 9 months. I came from Apple, actually, before I came here, but I had years' experience working in state government. But the most important thing that I recognize every single day that I come to work is I was also one of those Cal Grant students a long time ago, and it did give me the opportunity to complete my education. But for that aid, I probably wouldn't. But back then, it was called the Cal Grant Scholarship Program, which dates me. But I remember as a young person getting that letter that said, you have this California state scholarship. And I thought, wow, the state recognizes that I can be a good student. And I didn't know that it was because I was poor. I thought it was because I was just such a great student. But nevertheless, it was really important for me to say, someone believes in me and thinks that I'm worth going to college, and they're putting money to help me so that I can get through college and get that degree, and fortunately I was able to. So right now I'm overseeing the California Student Aid Commission, and I really think back several months into my job when we released what's called the Student Expense and Resources survey. It's a survey that is sent out to about 150,000 students throughout your segments. I know many of you are familiar with it. And we reinstituted after a 10-year hiatus. So we hadn't really heard directly from students, how are they faring in paying for college? So we got the results, and of course it was very sobering, because we learned that we're not talking about outlier students who are struggling on the periphery. We're talking about large numbers of students. And I'll just share with you two statistics that really help me understand just how profound the struggle is. And one is, the question was asked, what is your biggest struggle in going to college and completing? And 64% of the students said cost of college. And combination of cost of college and balancing work and their studies. 64% of students responded. So that means they're working hard to try to get that degree to better their lives. The second statistic was, in any given month, 1 in 3 students is, in fact, struggling with food and housing insecurity. That's real. And as Chancellor White said, he sees students sleeping in their cars. So what are we to do? Well, I think we have a lot of things to balance, but certainly the students that you are all working with, we know that is the future workforce of California. So it's so critical that we figure out how to make it how to make it possible for them to balance these cost and affordability issues by leveraging all the existing support services, resources, and certainly with financial aid, I'm looking at how we can leverage our piece of the puzzle, because it's a big puzzle. It is not just going to be one agency, one person, one segment that can solve it. All together, we'll come together, and we can make it easier for students to persist, graduate, thrive in that 21st century workplace.
Thank you so much. I hope, yes, please. I hope everyone in the room is feeling as inspired as I am hearing from these awesome women. I have one more question, and because we really believe in autonomy and choice here, you can choose between two different questions to answer. So you could either tell us a little bit about what your vision is for the future of addressing basic needs, or you can share a call to action for the folks in the room. Or both. There's no rules here. And let's start with Marlene this time.
Well, I'll start with a call to action. I think that's what we need. That's where we're at. And yes, we see a recession looming, but that's even more important for us to articulate what the problems are, but also what the solutions are. So I'm really blessed to have had the opportunity to work with a group of people directed by the legislature to come together and work in what's called the Cal Grant working group to find a solution to redesign the Cal Grant system in the context of the state financial aid system so that we can do a better job of not just recognizing and paying for tuition and fees, which our current financial aid system currently focuses on tuition and fees. But what it doesn't address quite as well, even though it's the largest financial aid system in the country, it doesn't address non-tuition aid. So the call to us was to thread a very fine needle. And that needle was, can you simplify the darn financial aid system so that people can understand it and be intentional about applying, especially students and families? And then also, how do we prioritize equity? Yes, we have a lot of low-income students in this state who are trying to get a college education. But if your parents make $0 to $14,000 a year, your experience is not the same as if your parents make $80,000 a year. All of them have need, there's no question. So how do you find a balance between providing tuition and aid for the students we've always served in the Cal Grant program, but targeting those students who are in the highest need level, because that is a struggle. They don't have a parental safety net to call mom or dad at the end of the month and say, I don't have enough to meet rent, or I don't have enough to buy food. They're the ones who are sleeping in their cars, skipping meals, or working too much to graduate in 4 years. So we had a commitment to equity. The third is non-tuition costs. And that we have to figure out a way to realign and leverage every single existing dollar to the maximum potential to provide that non-tuition basic need aid to those students who, but for that aid, are not going to be able to succeed. So I'm really pleased. The work group has been fantastic. We're going to be presenting the report to the commission on February 20th. I encourage you all to, it's going to be streamed. You can watch it or you can attend. It'll be in the Capitol. Thank you.
Thank you.
This morning when Chancellor Oakley was speaking, I was counting the number of times he said, it's about equity. It's about equity, it's about equity, it was 4 times, just so you know.
Paraphrasing.
And I think when I think about the work that we have to do, I think about poverty in California. Mm-hmm. I mean, I think certainly about students and basic needs, but I think that, I really resonated with the comment that it is both heartening to see all of these people in the room in common purpose, right? I'm not going to be able to get all those pretty eloquent words that Ruben is always able to string together to make us all feel good. But you know what I'm getting at, But so it is about coming together in common purpose, but it is also really sad to me that California students are coming together to talk about the fact that they don't have food to eat or a place to sleep. You know, it's hard for me to understand what it means to think about the promise of social mobility and how you get there when you don't have a place to put your head at night, or when you don't know where your next meal's coming from. And while I'm proud the California institutions all have a food pantry, and while I'm proud that we have, you know, rapid rehousing and emergency services and all of those things, I'm also sad that the path to social mobility is traveling, right, through economic insecurity, deep economic insecurity that is now somehow rooted and institutionalized in our colleges. So when I think about the call to action, I think that it is about really trying to figure out how do we deeply solve poverty and how do we live into the promise of higher education as being the solution to that and not the cause of poverty. I heard an economist recently say, you know, I'm not sure that college is worth it. And I'm not sure that college is worth it because the incredible cost of going to college can outweigh the opportunity structure that gets teed up for so many students. And that the path, it can take so long to get through. And that the amount of debt that you have when you finish may not actually be worth that investment. And I'm like, that to me is mind-bending, because I remember growing up and it was like, you are nothing if you don't kind of make your way and try and get that college degree. High school was no longer enough, it was about the college degree. And now we're saying that actually may not be enough. So to me, it's really about how do we get at poverty? We know a whole lot about when we think about who is food and housing insecure. We know about who that is correlated with. We know geographically where it's correlated. We know in terms of race and ethnicity where it's correlated. We know in terms of gender and students who have dependents where that's correlated. We know a whole lot about who is suffering the most. And it is our job to figure out how do we shift and address that. I believe that we can't do that unless we're doing that for the entire state, because we don't operate as islands. We are part of family structures. If we're not taking care of everybody, we can't just take care of our students. We have to take care of our students and their parents and their children. And so to me, the imperative is to really figure out how do we then leverage the incredible resources of our institutions to provide access to a much broader group of folks in the state of California, which is why I'm delighted to share the stage with these women. It's all about girl power. I'm delighted to share the stage with these women who are all thinking creatively together about how do we expand and extend opportunity beyond the few things that we may be responsible for. So,
Thank you.
So my call will be a little narrower, right? Because we uniquely are charged with administering a federal program in a difficult federal environment. And we primarily deal with a student eligibility rule, which was implemented in the 70s when being a student looked very different than what it looks like today. And so my call is kind of a trifecta. The first is to continue telling the story of what it looks like, what the experience is to be a student today, and to share that with federal decision makers who have the power to possibly rethink the role of SNAP in supporting students towards success. The second part of my trifecta is share it with other states. We are doing incredible work here in California. SNAP exists everywhere. The student eligibility rule exists everywhere. And I think we can have an influence on the way that other states think about how they administer SNAP for their students and how they can institute some of the best practices that we have identified here. And then the third is that don't just do it for students, because SNAP is available for every Californian at multiple stages in their lives, right? Older adults, working families, eligible immigrants. And we want to raise the bar for everyone and have a different understanding of how we offer, you know, whether it's situational need or longer term need, basic food benefits, right, that are critical to anybody's success and for which any of us on this stage could need at some point in our life or have needed before we got here. And so really using your perspective as a student to lift up the entire program, especially in this climate where we are being hit left and right with a different idea of what we should be doing for folks. And so I think that's important, that full trifecta, stool, whatever, three parts.
So My call to action is to create an environment in our colleges here in California where 1 in every 4 college student in the US is going to school, where where we can end basic need deprivation altogether. When I came to college, I also got the Cal grant, I got a Pell grant, I got a supplemental education opportunity grant, I got a college-based scholarship, and part of that college-based scholarship, I went to a private school, Mills College in Oakland. It was the first time I ever went that far from my home, which was about 100 miles away, was when I came to visit the college. And when I went there, my family lost the income that I was giving as a teenager. I had been working since I was 12, 13 years old. And they became homeless. And at the time, we didn't have cell phones. There was no way to get a hold of them. They lived at the park, Maidu Park in Auburn, outside of Auburn. Sometimes if they had money, they would live at the KOA, or they'd go to the hospital where you can go to the bathroom for free and nobody questions you when you're in the parking lot if you're white. Just want to point that out. If you can't see me up here, I know I'm small, but I'm very, very white, and so you get a lot of privilege with that. People don't ask you things. So I was in college, and part of my scholarship from the college was free room and board. I had a place to live. And the board part was, as I understood, free food. And while I went to the cafeteria and my peers were complaining about the meals that they were getting, I was like, what's this stuff called granola? This is incredible. And I was in awe of milk at every meal. I have milk every day for breakfast, and it wasn't the powdered milk. And it wasn't oatmeal made with water. It was milk. The little things that were just, things I hadn't had. So when I went to college, it was the first time I had 3 meals a day since I could remember. And it was liberation. Mm-hmm. To be able to be safe, have a place to sleep that was safe, be able to have food every day and not worry about where that was coming from. And the luxury of being able to do that and study. I had to work 2 jobs, on campus, off campus. I worked at the Sizzler in downtown Oakland as my off-campus job and at the pool on the on-campus job. But I was liberated. I, for the first time, felt a sense that I didn't have to panic. I wasn't in a panic, this sense of panic when you experience hunger, of your body deteriorating underneath you, of you knowing you can do better but not being able to escape the fog that your brain is left with when you don't have food, when you don't have safety. I was liberated. I want that for every student in the state of California. We can do that. We can do this, and not only can we do it, we have to do it. If we're gonna be California for all, if we're gonna be the great land of plenty, if we're gonna be the Golden State, we have to do it. We are mandated to do it. It's our obligation. And we can do it. We have so much resources here. We have vision. We have people we've elected to do the job, and they're willing to do it. So we're here showing up. I love what Ruben said. This was in the people's imagination that we would come together and do this. We don't want to have to be here. It would be great if we were already arrived at the things we will imagine we will have arrived at today and tomorrow. When we think about where we're going to be, it would be great if we had already been there. But one day we will, because we're here today. And we're going to be present, and we're going to keep working together. And we're going to declare that people deserve the right to food, and that food is a human right. And they're going to hear us back in D.C., and we're going to keep fighting those Trump fights, those Trump cuts to the food programs, and the Trump cuts to Social Security, and the Trump cuts to the health care. We're going to keep fighting those together. And that's really my call to action. I want no babies to be without diapers. I don't want people to be without food. We shouldn't be without a bed that you feel safe to sleep in. And we can do that for each other. And we deserve it. We really deserve it.
Right on. Thank you.
Thank you to our panelists for sharing those profound calls to action. I also have a call to action for you all, which is get your questions ready because we're moving into the interactive portion. I believe Ruben will be helping facilitate this portion. We have time to take at least 2, maybe 3 questions from you all for the panelists.
Can we give it up for them one more time, y'all? So I want to have a moment to just even name and acknowledge, yes, this is a dream coming together, but it's always been a dream to have the right people in the right places. And right now we have a panel that is the embodiment and the fulfillment of that dream. When you think about who's in the governor's office, when you think about who is advocating on behalf of student financial aid in California, when you think about who is in the California Department of Social Services, when you think about who's bringing like voice to power and people to power and advocating on behalf of folks that are experiencing socioeconomic, housing, food challenges, and when you think about the student voice and student leadership that is driving that, they are here in human form for you all. Can we give it up for them one more time? Okay, so what we're gonna do is we're gonna invite, so if you think there's an imaginary, actually there's no you see that camera? From the camera to the right, from the camera to the left, we're gonna invite one question from each side. So if you have a question, feel free to raise your hand and I'll come to you all. And I wanna invite in this moment, if you are a Native or Indigenous person, if you are a person of color, if you are a woman, if you are differently abled, if you are the voice that doesn't necessarily get centered in the spaces that we are a part of, we want to hear your voice. So think about that, and let me see some hands. And if we're hands over there, Jessica, do you want to go to that one first? And I'll keep searching on this. Oh, there you go.
And we're ready for your question when you're ready to ask it.
Hi, my name is Anita Ramasastri. I'm from Moore Park Community College. So my question for you all is, what has been your biggest challenge in your advocacy efforts in basic needs thus far, and how have you overcome this challenge or challenges, and what has been your biggest takeaway?
That's a big question.
And that can be the warm-up to like your biography or autobiography at some point. 'Cause we're about to get some wisdom right now. So take your time.
I'll give you a small nugget, because sometimes transitioning to government can be a little different than working in the nonprofit sector or as a traditional advocate. But I firmly believe in radical incrementalism, and that is what you just need to stick with it, right? Things can move slower than you might want them to move. You may want to disrupt the system completely. You might want to do something completely different. That may not be the best strategy, but you can make change if you kind of have that vision and accept that you can be radical and incremental. You just keep pushing. And I think especially in government, where we are intended to be stable, right? That is our essential role. You have to accept that sometimes change is a little slower, but if you stick with it, you can do some really amazing things because you have crazy resources behind you and great partners.
That was well said.
Yeah, that was.
There's hope.
I'll add, I agree with everything Alexis said, and I think really, just like your conference here, having a vision, having a plan, and not giving up hope when it gets hard. I think that's the hardest part, when we feel so discouraged that everything's against us, that the odds are working against us. Just keep believing and keep that vision clear and help others around you see that clarity, because at the end of the day, it's about who you're serving. And every single day, remembering that face, that person that is depending on your advocacy. And I think that to me is another critical part of keeping the cause moving.
I think I would say, for people, for the students in the room who are coming up through poverty and trying to get through college, or maybe you're a young professional who's just starting out. It's hard. You will have family and friends who will struggle with poverty still. You'll be maybe, in my case, for example, my dad was illiterate. Like, he couldn't read or write. And so I had to do a lot. I still have to do a lot for him. These will be things that other people, peers of yours that aren't experienced in poverty or haven't come up through it, won't know. It's not their fault that they don't know, And I think to just kind of know that it's going to be hard, but it's going to be beautiful. It's going to be beautiful. And you're going to find allies in all places. And what you heard Ruben say before, you belong here. You belong where you're going. Don't give up, whether it's an advocacy goal or not. See yourselves there. Keep going. Be present. Don't apologize for being where you are or who you are. And come authentically as that. I think that for me is, was really hard when I first started out. And even sometimes, people want to make you feel like you don't belong there. And if you know who you are and you know what you want to achieve, you have your vision of what justice is, just keep going. You don't need their permission. Thank you.
I guess, Alexis talked about what did you say?
Radical
incrementalism. I think radical incrementalism is important and realistic and also needs to be offset by just bold, badass requests, right? You need to be able to go in and ask for what you need and deserve, right? And to be able to marry personal experience with data and evidence and research, right? Because I know for us, we're in the business of making sure that Californians are well served. We're not serving a single Californian as much as we are serving groups of Californians. So when I can say, yes, I understand the nature of the experience, but I can also say, it's this many people in these kinds of circumstances, and if we have a policy that we are able to leverage that can address all of that, that's my winning argument, right? So I think it is about both recognizing that there are places for radical incrementalism, and then there are places for bold, requests, bold asks, bold demands, right? And that somewhere between that incrementalism and that bold demand, you're going to find the path.
Awesome.
I'm going to break protocol, Ruben, if that's okay. As a student leader, I just can't resist the chance to talk about advocacy, so thank you for your beautiful question. Eloy earlier said that some folks don't get it and don't understand the work that we do. And as a student in high up governance spaces, I find myself communicating with a lot of those folks and dialoguing across difference, and maybe some of you do too. And I would just like to highlight how important it is to have folks around you that do get it, and to spend your time and energy refueling with the folks that really motivate you and provide community. And I hope that you all have those folks in your lives. Maybe they're here, but if you don't, this summit could be a great chance to build those relationships.
True.
Beautiful. So in the spirit of time and moving at the pace of wellness and intention, so we have one more question from this side, and then we had a question from our second room because we packed this room. So there's actually a second room with folks that are tuning in live. That's why we have all these fancy cameras. So shout out to the second room. So I'm gonna pass the mic. I'm gonna ask them to say their names and share their question. We're gonna get both questions, and then you all can respond to them. Is that clear? So we'll get both questions and then pass it over to you all.
Hello, my name is Shantae Cat. And I have a question about how do you combat institutionalized hazing and the idea that people and faculty and supervisors and higher-ups have this ideology that, well, I had to go through it, I had to eat top ramen, I had to do it, so what's the big deal? And then kind of lost my train of thought because that's so important. But also, here it came back. How do you also relay the message when people are saying, well, we're not social workers? Because I had someone ask me that today. We're not social workers. It's not our job to do this. How do you respond to that?
Hi, everyone. My name is Faith, and my question was if there were any moves being made statewide or federally to make CalFresh and financial aid more accessible to international and undocumented students.
So whoever would like to offer wisdom, we have about 5 minutes to offer whatever it is that you would like to offer to those two questions. And you're supposed to give all the answers. Like, you're gonna solve those things right now. Thank you.
So that's about 1 minute per panelist.
I'd like to just set the stage and remind people that we are looking at June for a likely decision on the DACA rule. That's 200,000 Californians who could lose their DACA status. We don't have a plan. California doesn't yet have a plan for what to do. I've been around the Capitol the last couple of weeks just trying to ask a young woman who I mentor, who also mentors me, because that's what a mentor is, right? You mentor each other. Don't get a mentor who doesn't also learn from you. And she raised the issue. What are we doing about this? I hadn't realized it was coming so fast. So I don't have the answer to what we can do, and I hope my colleagues do, on making sure that everybody who wants to be in college and can be there, regardless of their citizenship status. If they are Californian, they deserve a chance at the California dream. And I don't have the answer to that, but I do know we have some challenges up ahead, and we got to kind of kick it into gear to get and work with people who are impacted. Make sure that we're turning to the community of people who are representing this group of students and want to be students, and asking them how to best serve them. And for the people, again, for the people who are telling you they're not your social worker and they ate top ramen and you didn't, again, not everybody's gonna get it. Not everybody's gonna get it. I would just kind of organize above, keep on going, and show them, what respect and love for your student community looks like by demonstrating that.
All right, 60 seconds, go. You have my card, right? You can tell me. When the question about the hazing hit me in a different... Institutionalized hazing. No, I understood that. That struck a chord in me because it sounded so familiar. It actually reminded me of being a doctoral student. Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah. All right? It reminded me of being a doctoral student and, trying to, wrap your brain around all these things you're trying to do, and having older professors say, well, that's, you need to do it that way because that's the way we did it. Mm-hmm. And there's something about, it's there. Fundamentally, all that is about power.
Yeah.
And so my core says, don't let anyone take your power even when they're trying, right? But also, part of the power play is now that I've achieved, I'm going to pull the bridge up behind me. And that's not what we're about. That's certainly not the aspiration of being Californian, right? That's not who we are. So that's when we push back, right? And I think we're incredibly fortunate in this state because while we have differences, there are so many more of us that agree than disagree. There are so many more of us that agree on what we need to do and in fact, how we need to do it than those of us who disagree. And so I think, part of it is in finding your people, right? And it's in understanding who your allies are and in coming up with a coordinated strategy and in saying, actually, no, I'm not going out like that. So, I mean, I would just say that institutionalized power, figure out who those people on your campuses, figure out who those chancellors are in your system who are willing to show up for you, because they are there. I know they are there. I talk to them. I know what they care about. And so don't assume just because there's a couple people in the middle that there aren't other people who are on your side.
I think on the point of CalFresh eligibility, right, and bold asks, right? Yeah. You work for the governor, let him know.
You're not the first person to say that to me.
I think it's not just on food, it's on everything that you saw from this administration. It's rethinking what it means to offer a true safety net in California, where needs may be different than in other states around our demographics, our housing costs. And so I think it may not be CalFresh that can solve the problem of providing food benefits to non-citizens in our state, but I think it's rethinking that safety net so that they're fully integrated as we do roll out state solutions.
I'll address the question about assistance to international and undocumented students. So in California, we're only one of 12 states in the country that offers a Cal Grant through the California Dream application to students. But my biggest worry and what keeps me up at night is, how do we get the message out to them to let them know that they're legally eligible and entitled to apply for this Cal Grant if they have need? But there's so much fear and confusion out there. Who do they trust? I mean, I'm just another state agency, a government agency. They don't really know whether we can be trusted. So I have found that the most effective way to convey that information and those opportunities to students is to work with you. People like you, organizations that they do trust. You're their trusted partners, and conveying that information to them so they have a safe place to ask the questions. Well, what about this public charge issue, my family's mixed status? How do I get this information? There's so much confusion out there, and I think that that's where you all have the opportunity to rise and really be those individuals who completely turn people's lives around. And I know that I hope to, one of my big priorities is to work with folks like you and to get the word out, because this is a population that only has access to state aid, because California has seen fit to say, these are college students who want to better their lives. And by God, we need it. 49% of working Californians are living in poverty. So how could we not help students who want to help themselves and their communities? So I just look to you as partners to join me in that struggle. We don't have all the answers yet, but I think that together we can really help a lot more students.
Thank you to our three brave question askers. I'm going to hand things back to Ruben, who has some important announcements for you all. But first, I want to thank our panelists again for setting such a collaborative and powerful tone.